Look at this shot of Red Hood Batman and tell me it does not look amazing. Okay, so Red Hood Batman is phenomenal. He's everything that you would hope he would be. But before we get into him, we actually have to wrap up the fight that Batman is currently having with Dick Grayson. Now, for those of you guys who don't know how we got to this point, where Batman's literally fighting his Robins, who have all become Batmen, although Red Hood has not been a Robin for a very long time, this all came out of DCKO, right? That the idea was that during the DCKO event when it kicked off, Batman was killed, and then he suddenly woke up in this place where Dick Grayson was Batman. And he didn't quite know exactly what was going on, but Dick Grayson kept telling him things about how he's crazy, he's not really Batman, how he basically killed everybody, all that kind of stuff. So here's what this does, right? With the fight between Dick Grayson and Batman continuing, Batman says, there was a time when I felt Gotham was mine, but I learned the hard way that Gotham belongs to no one. Dick has not learned that lesson yet. He trusted the city. He trusted its people in ways that I struggled with. He's turned Gotham into something else, a training ground for an army of Robins. My mother box armor speaks to me, tells me something about the reality I am in, and I do not listen. Instead, I feel Dick's heartbeat. The rhythm as he yells at me tells me what he sees as the truth, but his heart betrays him. The Justice League was tasked with entering a tournament, a challenge. We were told we could bring one item with us into the fight, and I cheated. Now, this is an important thing because that's technically what happened. The idea was that if they lost the tournament, they would just kind of be stowed away. They would be quote unquote dead, but not really permanently dead. In the case of Bruce, he had brought an exit, which is to say mother box armor that he could use to teleport out of the tournament and back to the rest of the world because they didn't know exactly where they were going. Now, we know they're fighting in the center of the earth at this point, but it would give Bruce the ability to come back and then start figuring out what their next steps should be, because the reality is he never really expected to survive in the first place, or at least that seems to be the case. But we also learn from the Superman Captain Atom fight that if you try to cheat in the tournament, you will be punished by the heart. It will respond in some capacity. And that's what's happening here. Because at that point, in the tail end of this fight between the two, Batman tells Dick Grayson, your heart gave you away, Dick. It does not match your age. I know what being Batman does to our bodies. And the heartbeat I just heard was not yours. This world is a lie. Now, as far as the mother box talking to him about the world, seemingly is trying to convince him that the world is real. It's trying to tell him this world is a real world and everything he's seeing is actually real. Of course, Bruce, being smart enough to figure all that out, has deduced that's not the case. And so Dick Grayson, who's really just a manifestation of the Heart of Apocalypse now, just kind of tells Bruce, right, you have to trust me. Let's go home. And that's where Bruce says, I died in the tournament. The Joker killed me, but I tried to escape, and the heart didn't like that. Now, that's a true statement. We cover that in DCKO number 1. I'll have a link to the playlist in the description, and you guys can check it out there. But yeah, like in the first issue, Joker killed Batman. It was amazing. It was pretty awesome. It was technically Joker in the Legion of Doom. So like Joker, Lex Luthor, a whole bunch of those guys. It was pretty baller. But again, he chimes back in and he says, because I cheated, the heart didn't like that, so it made this world for me. And so Dick Grayson says, I thought I could save you, Bruce, even after what you did to Jason, Tim, and Damian. I still wanted to help you, but now I see that you are too far gone, and I don't even need to fight you. Look around you. My Robins are everywhere. You can never escape any of them. And that's where Batman tells him that was the other tell, right? You let your Robins fight for you. Dick Grayson would never do that. He knows I always fought alongside my Robins. And he says, I trained you and your brothers and sisters, and I bet my Robins can kick your Robins' asses. And so at that point, Dick Grayson is just like, Robins, fly. And then they all just go after Batman, and he's just like, too easy. But here's kind of the funny thing about this, right? Despite everything that's going on here, Batman does kind of admire the world that Dick Grayson could have made as Robin. Now, we're not talking about, Nightwing, the New Order, or the New World. I can't remember the name of that story. The one where he took away everybody's powers. If you guys never read that story, it's amazing. Dick Grayson takes away the powers of everybody in the world. It's phenomenal. It's one of the greatest stories ever written by DC. It's incredible. But the fact is, right, it's not like that. This is, in effect, the Gotham that in a lot of ways Batman was hoping for. Not in the sense that there is no crime or anything, but in the sense that Dick Grayson hasn't really been using the Batman mantle to terrify people, he's been using the Batman mantle to protect people. He's a better version of Batman than Bruce. And so where he just like crushes all of these Robins, at that point he just looks at Dick Grayson and he's like, are you sure you trained these guys, Dick? Because they're soft, right? And so at that point, Dick Grayson is just like, Robin, stand down, right? Batman is mine. And that's the final fight between the two of them, because it's a knockdown, drag out fight between them, right? Batman says, the day I first saw Dick Grayson, he was flying high on a trapeze. He glided through the air with a confidence I never had at his age. It took trauma to learn the skills that he knew by instinct. And the truth is, from the moment he fought by my side, I knew he would surpass me. So much so that I didn't think he'd need to even be Batman. And here I see that he not only became Batman, he's a better Batman. And so Dick Grayson gets the upper hand on Bruce. And so at that point, Bruce just says, okay, right? Like, fair enough. He says, I see it now. You are right. I was wrong. I did it. I killed them, and I could never handle it or deal with it, just like my parents. It's a ruse. And Dick Grayson says, it's okay, Bruce, I can help you. Once the Lazarus venom wears off, you will see what this world is really like. You will learn to love it. And so at that point, Dick Grayson extends a hand. Bruce Wayne grabs Dick's hand and just says, thank you, Batman, for being something I could never be. And then clocks this guy, and he's like, too trusting. And he says, you still want to see the best in people. It's why you always got along with Clark, but you are not the real Dick. You never could be. Dick actually trusts people, but he does not try to control them. I see now what the Heart of Apocalypse wants me to do. The same thing I told Clark. Don't hold back. And when he goes in for the hit, he's immediately electrocuted, right? Just like shocked all to pieces, and then wakes up in a cell. And is like, what in the heck is happening? And Red Hood is just standing over him, looking like the greatest version of Batman I have ever seen in my life. I love the way that Red Hood You cannot tell me that Red Hood Batman does not look amazing. He looks incredible, man. I love this version of him, right? And with Batman stuck in this cell, right, quite literally just kind of tied down, Red Hood tells him, you tried to escape again. It's time for your treatment. And that's a crazy thing, right? Bruce is just like, Jason, is that you? And Red Hood says, Jason is dead. Call me Batman. And that's where Batman's just kind of like, this isn't real, right? And that's where Red Hood just kneels down. Now, here's the thing about Jason Todd. Jason Todd is not like Dick Grayson. DC tried to make him that way when they introduced him pre-Crisis, and they basically gave him the exact same origin story as Dick Grayson. Fans hated it, so much so that depending on what version of the story you choose to believe, either fans called in or one fan rung in when DC was extending that opportunity to the fan base to decide whether or not Dick Grayson lives or dies, and Dick Grayson died in Death in the Family, right? Like, he got killed by the fans. That's how much they hated him. Again, it depends on which version of the story you want to go with. But at the end of the day, between stories like Under the Red Hood and the Outlaws from DC Rebirth, one of the greatest stories ever written, and even any story involving his character that's happened in between, Jason Todd is dark. Jason Todd is twisted, and Jason Todd has no scruples with killing folks, right? He will help you understand your place in the bigger picture with extreme prejudice. You know what I mean? Like, this dude is like a Punisher Batman. And so when he kneels down, he asks him, which is the lie this time? What reality are you saying you're from? Are you telling me you were trapped in the dark multiverse this time? That you had the powers of Superman? That you were buff and carried a big axe? Obviously a reference to Absolute Batman, right? You held a Green Lantern ring? And Batman just says, right, the heart played its hand and I am not falling for it again. And so Red Hood says, okay, so it's that one, right? The Apocalypse Tournament, that old nugget. And he just says, it's the one where reality was changing. So you could fight your friends to the death? I thought you were dead, you know, and then one day you're just here, talking about alternate realities where my brothers and sisters are all still alive, and not a day goes by that I don't think about our family. Now, what happens here when Jason Todd takes his helmet off, right? What's the importance of this? Dick Grayson never did that, right? It's one of these interesting things. If you kind of scale back and you look at the bigger picture as to how things are transpiring, each of these steps that Batman is experiencing, I wouldn't say is falling deeper and deeper down the well. It's really more the Heart of Apocalypse learning from its own experience. Batman did not trust Dick Grayson. And one of the things that you guys had mentioned in the comments of the first video that we did from Knightfight, because yes, I read your comments, one of the things that you guys had mentioned was how different would the first issue of Knightfight had been if Dick Grayson had shown his face to Batman and earned Batman's trust that way. And so that's what the Heart of Apocalypse is doing here. It's literally learning from us in the real world. No, it's learning, right? If Jason Todd shows his face to Batman, Batman will be more inclined to believe him. And that's exactly what happens. Because when Batman sees his face, at that point, he's like, Jason, you have to listen to me. And so now he's appealing to Jason on an emotional level. He's engaging with him as an actual person instead of rejecting him as an individual and believing that nothing that he's seeing is real. And so Jason tells him, he's like, here's the thing, Bruce, you and I both know you're not really Batman. Isn't that right? Play face. And Bruce is just like, no, I am real, Jason. Like, I don't care if you believe me or not, but you have to let me go. So that's one of the cool things here, engaging in Jason as a person, communicating directly with him as a person, as if the Jason Todd he's talking to is really Jason Todd, in direct juxtaposition to, you're not Dick Grayson. You're not the real Dick Grayson. You don't really see that here. And so that's the cool thing, because Jason says, this charade really gets under my skin, especially after I found you on the streets, Basil, took you in. And so at that point, Bruce just starts screaming at the Heart of Apocalypse, like Jennifer Love Hewitt from I Know What You Did Last Summer, right? Is this what you want? Right? And Jason's just like, listen to yourself, right? Yelling at the sky. And Bruce just says, Jason, don't do this. If you kill me, you'll be playing into what the Heart wants. And Jason screams at him, right? Just tells him, shut up, right? You twisted freak. Do you have any idea how screwed up it is posing as him? You're trapped in this form, Basil. You really believe that you are Batman. And he says, you know a few things that you shouldn't, but your info is all dated. And so that's where Bruce is just like, I'm not wasting any more time on this game. And he just says, fight me. And so at that point, the two start getting into this knockdown, drag out, bare knuckle brawl, right? And the whole time, Bruce is commenting on everything. He says, the Heart crafted this world around my fears. My fear that I let Gotham down, that I let Jason down, which he did, that by not killing my enemies, I was failing the city and people that I loved, that Jason's struggle was right, that his instincts were the right way, that he would be a better Batman than me because he was willing to do what I could not. The Heart wants me to see that, to break me down, but I will always find another way. And that's the important thing here, because technically Jason Todd is not entirely wrong. No one is ever completely right or completely wrong, but there is something to be said about the fact that there are some villains in Batman's rogues gallery that are just too extreme, and the only way to deal with them is to simply just kill them and be done with it. Joker's a perfect example of that, and that's the Red Hood mentality, right? He doesn't believe in like killing people who knock over a liquor store. But guys like the Joker, people who are depraved and have a depraved indifference to society, they gotta go, right? And he didn't really feel too bad about it. And so Batman overcomes Jason and just kicks him into a wall, right? Kicks him right back into the cell and just says, I'm sorry, and then takes off. But Jason tells him, right, you cannot run. There is no escaping this place. And so when Batman finally gets out into the world, the entirety of the sky is dark. But that's not the creepy part. Here's what he says. There is something about Gotham not a lot of people talk about: the sound. A cacophony of people, lives, good and bad, joy and fear in a massive orchestra. I have spent countless nights listening to the city, the sounds of people, the hum of electricity. But now, silence. There is nothing. And the sky is completely red. And that's where he's like, what is going on? You are literally the only occupant of this city, Jason. What is going on? And that's where Jason appears behind him and just says, now you're getting it, right? You're remembering the truth. You thought you were escaping Arkham, but Gotham is Arkham now. Batman always thought I leaned into the violence or killing. That was his nightmare for me. No, I gave that up. The thing I learned from watching Bruce was how to be alone. And just like him, that was my destiny, to save Gotham alone. Because Gotham City is quite literally a city in a bottle. And so Batman asks him the million-dollar question, right? What happened? And Jason just says, the Joker, right? He launched the biggest joke of all. We managed to evacuate the city. The dome keeps Joker's irradiated gas trapped. I had to stay behind and keep it safe, isolated. The plus side is that not a single crime has happened in 20 years. And that's where Bruce is like, you've been trapped in this city by yourself for 20 years. And Jason just says, there are days when someone risks it, right? They try to break in and get exposed to Joker's gas, and I would deal with them. Then you came along claiming to be Batman, but Bruce is long buried. The same with Joker. They both died in the streets because of the gas. And so that's where Bruce is just like, no, right? This is all wrong. There's no way this is real. This is a game. So as you're noticing here, he's succumbing more and more to the effects of the Heart of Apocalypse because it's deeper and deeper into his fears. And so Jason says, you need to accept it, Basil. You are not Batman. I am. And so at that point, Bruce just says, fine, if the heart wants me to believe that I am Clayface, then I'll play. And he turns into Clayface. Like he physically becomes Clayface, which means now he can distort the world around him. If the Heart of Apocalypse can trick Batman into believing that the world that he's seeing is real, then Batman can remake the world into what he wants it to be, including himself. So Batman basically has reality warping powers now. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.